Welcome back to Dance Studio Advertising. Today we are talking about how to maximize your marketing budget without wasting money on advertising. This is a big topic. It's been coming up more and more and more recently. And if it's okay, before we dive in, I actually want to set the stage on, I think, why it's showing up more recently.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a little bit vulnerable for our listeners today, or for us to share with you. I think one of the big reasons that this topic is coming up is suddenly in the marketplace, there are a lot of options in terms of where you're going to go to get your marketing taken care of. And if you're watching the video, you saw the air quotes. If you're not watching the video, then I'm doing air quotes because not all solutions are created equal. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
But we are talking to more and more studio owners that are showing up saying, advertising doesn't work for me. Facebook ads don't work for me. Instagram ads don't work for me. And when we ask why, it's simply because they've tried it, they've spent money on it. Sometimes they've spent a lot of money on it and they're not getting the results that they're hoping for. So that's sort of the impetus behind this conversation, why it's important, where it's coming from our perspective. Christian, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think too, what channel to market on is a big question too. Like we've seen, especially among our clients, diving into Google ads just because, hey, let's just do it. But even that is not for everyone alone too. And there's a lot of other factors that people aren't considering when it comes to their marketing budget. And so I'm seeing just a lot of, needless spending in other areas without really investigating like how these other channels are going to help you grow your studio. So I think that is also something that comes up in the decision making of, okay, I have this much money, where does it go? Does it go into an employee? Do I go to an agency? Then my ad budget, like there's a lot of budget buckets, I guess, in this conversation.
Well, so how do we realistically, like pull back the curtain on this and dive into, we are talking about small businesses. Dance studios by nature are, they're brick and mortar. You're going to be limited by your location, your physical studio locale. You're going to be limited by the size of your actual footprint. Marketing dollars are not limitless. There is a very real cap on how much can responsibly be spent on ads, on attracting new dancers. And it's really important that we're spending that money wisely. So how do we do this? How do we start unpacking this? Because there's so much nuance in a conversation like this.
Yeah. I think let's just start with how to approach this. If you're going to choose something, because I think an important side of the conversation, if I'm going to start spending money, you got to know at what point should you turn off the hose if it's leaking.
Right.
And so I think just in general, plan to give yourself 90 days at least, because no matter what channel you explore, it's going to require some fine tuning, and 2 weeks won't be enough to know if it works or not. Like you can't just spend $100. Like you got to give it 90 days and like focus on it and pick one thing. So don't try to do too many things at once is another advice.
All right, hold on. So let's back it all the way up because this is super important. So that 90-day thing, that's per channel. That's not necessarily per campaign or...
Correct.
So this is if you're trying to decide, should we... I'm going to go like way off the wall. Should we hire a videographer to show up every week and film our students and then put that on TikTok? Like that would be a channel, right? Like that's like a strategy. That's a channel. And you're saying give 90 days to that before you even begin to evaluate if it's a I'm going to use the word good, but again, air quotes, a good channel, an accurate, effective channel for your marketing strategy.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
So
just wanted to clarify that. That's not per campaign. That's per
helpful
channel.
To clarify. So whether it's like, I'm going to give Google ads, give it 90 days. I'm going to give Facebook ads, give it 90 days. I'm going to give social media posting 5 times a week, give that 90 days. Because that's going to give you enough data, information. Because within each channel, you're going to have to like find what works. And it's going to take time.
Well, and there's another component to this too, because the channel may work, And so marketing is almost by definition an iterative process, right? And so when
100%, yeah.
just because you tried a Facebook ad for 90 days, like you build one campaign, you turn it on, you let it run for 90 days. At the end of the 90 days, you go, well, that didn't work for me. You turn it off. And we do see that happens. Like studios will come to us having worked with other solutions, service providers, marketing partners, whatever, and they describe their experience, and it's exactly that. There's also this extra layer of nuance where just because it didn't work for you doesn't mean it doesn't work, because you can do it horribly, totally, completely wrong and get bad results, like poor results. Whereas that same campaign in the hands of someone who is adept and knows what they're doing could produce a completely different outcome. And so it's even more nuanced than just pick a channel for 90 days. It's like pick a channel and then give it 90 days, but then optimize and look at your data every single week and try to incrementally make it better, and introduce challenger campaigns with an A/B split test. And if you don't know any of the words that I'm saying, then either go back and listen to the earlier episodes or reach out to Dance Motion Marketing. We'd be happy to chat. But that's ultimately what marketing is. It's just a series of rapid form experimentations that ultimately get you to an answer. Does this work for me, or does it not work for me? So there is an extra layer of complexity even in just that, like giving it 90 days.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the second thing that I rudely jumped in and like cut you off on?
Well, I think I'm glad you did, because I don't remember, and I think I have a better answer for the second thing. And that comes down to what we talk about all the time on this amongst ourselves, is knowing your numbers. You got to give yourself a definable metric and an outcome of what you want. Whether it's like, A, a budget, and then B, you want to start calculating that spend. We just did a session about the 10 most important numbers to know in your studio business, to the Regal Studio Alliance members. And one of those is cost per lead. You got to know that's the number you want to know and keep track of, to know within that 90 days, are you going in the right direction? First, establish that number, and maybe say, hey, let's give ourselves a goal. We want to, get 15 new students from this particular marketing strategy in the next 90 days. And, know that number going into it and track it every week leading up within those 90-day parameters. Is know your numbers. You don't want to go in blind. Like you gave a great analogy of airplane pilots, right? So if you want to touch on that just to help visualize that, our listeners are very visual. So I thought that pilot analogy was perfect that you shared.
Yeah. I mean, it really just comes down to, I think a lot of us get really comfortable making decisions based on what we see, like actually see with our eyes. And the reality is that's not always the full picture. And so pilots get in the cockpit of a plane and they start flying, well, that's great if you're taking off at 9 a.m. and it's clear blue skies. But as soon as you're in cloud cover, or you're flying at night, or you're storms, you need other indicators that are telling you, is the plane, how fast is it going? Is it pitching up? Are you getting ready to crash into the side of a mountain? Because you can't always rely on what you see, or maybe more appropriately what you think you see. And knowing the numbers in your business is a great way to just understand, where are we headed? Are we doing well? Are we not doing well? Are we growing? Are we not growing? And there's lots of different ways to measure that. This is where it comes down to really knowing your numbers, just because, I mean, we work with lots and lots of studio owners, and they all measure success slightly differently. It's similar, but it's slightly different. And so it really is knowing what's important for you to measure, to allow you to then take these experimentative steps to run a campaign, launch a campaign, try something that maybe you've never done before, and do it with a safety net to say, I'm willing to spend this much over this amount of time.
Absolutely.
It reminds me of a story when Ricky and Lisa, who are two clients that we work with, are out in California, when they had some amazing success. Like I think we met them, they had 60 dancers in their program. Ricky was working a full-time job. Lisa was trying to get the studio up and running, but it wasn't really doing its thing. We started working with them, and found some really, really fast success. And it hasn't stopped. Like, they've just not taken
Yeah.
their foot off the gas. We could tell the stories, but truthfully, it would blow your mind. Like, I actually had somebody the other day, like, angrily reach out to me on Facebook, and they're like, "There's no way that's true." I'm like, "No, it actually is." But they said, when we asked them, we said, "Well, what was the success?" And they said, we took a certain amount of money and we put it aside for our marketing, and we were ready to just kiss it goodbye. Like, we were going to commit that amount of money, whether it worked or not. And it would have about covered 90 days of truthfully like building an ad campaign and letting it run. And that was super insightful to me, just like not pulling the plug on it early because you don't necessarily think it's working. Just like budget a certain amount that you can reasonably afford, put it to work for you, and do not cut it off until every one of those dollars is spent. Because I do think that's a mistake that studios make. They'll start a campaign, they'll run it for a week, they'll spend $200, they'll get super nervous, they cut it off, and they're done. And that's it. Like, they're done. The marketing doesn't work for me. Doing more air quotes. I'm in an air quoting kind of mood, I guess.
I mean, that's really tricky because, especially like, as you said, a lot of marketing agencies are entering the dance space. It makes it incredibly more challenging to decipher who's good, who's going to give you a good service, who's not, who knows what they're doing. Because there's a lot of nuances in the whole funnel of the app where things can break and it leads to wasted money instead of invested money. So I think if you know what your numbers are, you can catch it before. Like, even in that session we did, we were like, who knows their cost per lead? A handful of people knew, and someone's like, I haven't checked in over a month. Well, if like you can't go that long, you gotta like you said, like the pilot, you don't know if you're going to crash into a mountain unless you're looking at your numbers and instruments to see what your elevation is, how far from the nearest object is. And so you don't want to be waiting 30 days to look at those numbers, because you could look at it and be like, wow, actually, I would have turned this off 3 weeks ago.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and we see this all the time. Like, we shared the story in the Regold Studio Owner Alliance session, but we had a studio that we worked with years ago, and she reached out to us, and we checked in with her, and how you doing? She's like, oh my God, I'm so good. I enrolled 15 new dancers this past week. And so we celebrated the win, and we were like, this is amazing. Like, way to go. And caught up with her like a week or maybe 2 later. And she was just like so down in the dumps. We're like, what's going on? She's like, I'm broke. I can't, like, my studio's broke. We're like, what? How? You just enrolled 15 new dancers and we know your price point. So like, you should have at least this much. Like, what happened? And during the same period of time that she enrolled 15, she had lost 17 and didn't realize it. So she went and started spending money, because in her mind, she's like, oh, I can give my teachers a raise, and oh, I can take them out for an appreciation dinner, and oh, I can do all these things. Well, really, she couldn't, because she was -2, but didn't realize it. And the same thing can happen with your advertising. It is so easy to hit spend or increase your daily ad budget by $5, which isn't a lot, except when you start thinking about it over the course of a week or a month or 6, and suddenly that $5 a day really adds up. If you're not getting your return, if you don't know your numbers, you're in a bad way. It's just, I mean, it's the short and long.
Yeah.
Okay. Other ideas on maximizing budget. I'm just going to suggest one that has been on my mind often, and it goes along with this idea of knowing your numbers, but like know what kinds of campaigns work well for you and when. And that's going to take some trial and error to establish that baseline. But when you see that a campaign is not working, when you see that an offer is not converting, or that it is bringing in a lot of people, we talked about cheap leads, it's bringing in a lot of people, but they're the wrong people. They're not the right ones for you. Cut your losses and move on. The number of times that we see studios that just like want to double down on something that clearly isn't working because they're like trying to redeem the bad with some eventual good, it doesn't turn around like that. It's not really how buying behavior works. Just cut your losses and understand that it's not emotional. It's just business. We all spend money in business. Our team at DMM, we will run campaigns for ourselves and be like, this is going to be the best. And then we put it out there. And we're like, that was awful. Shut it off. Let's never do that again. but learn the lessons and just then actually don't do it again. Like don't go back again and again to something that
Yeah.
has proven that it does not work for you.
Yeah. And that will really take, the seasonality of studio, that will take a full year of experimentation to know
Minimum.
what's going to work, what's going to not. Because every season, fall, spring, winter, summer, has different offers, different timings. And the needs of parents are changing constantly as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's significant. Like the things that worked this time last year aren't working as well this time this year, and that's okay. Keeping your eye on that or having somebody that is keeping their eye on that for you
Mm-hmm.
is going to be critical. And
Yeah.
I would say actually that's the last thing. I think a lot of, or at least my last thing, you may have more. I think a lot of studio owners show up and they say, I can't afford marketing, or I don't want to spend money on a marketing partner. I'm going to do it myself. I went through one of the free seminars. I, joined a DSOA event or whatever. Like I can do it myself. And that may be true. It might be. Maybe you can do it yourself. Maybe you can figure it out. But just because you saw something or you learned something in a seminar 6 months ago doesn't mean that it's going to apply or be effective today.
Right.
And that's like our team spends, I mean, I don't know, how many hours a week would you say we spend collectively between the delivery and the data and the, like really sifting through things to understand what's working and what isn't. I mean, we've made a massive, I'm not going to talk about it, but we've made a massive investment into understanding what's working and what's not in terms of time and actual capital as well. And it's changing constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And so just because you know how to run an ad doesn't mean that that what you were taught 3-6 months ago, 9 months, a year ago is going to apply, because it feels like it's moving faster than it's ever gone before.
Yeah, it is. Competition is rising for sure. Yeah, I love that ad, by the way. I think the final thing that I would consider too is be ready for you and your team to put in the work. Marketing is not the end all be all to the growth. It's going to highlight, and your team's got to be ready, to be on top of it. Make sure, like, hey, if we're doing this thing, we got to have our communication ready to go for parents that are reaching out. We want to be able to provide a consistent and exceptional customer experience when our parents arrive for the first time with their dancers. And you got to have your sales process down. Like all this really needs to be there to make the best of your marketing budget, because marketing is one piece of the whole business system. And a lot of stories there, but I think it's just being ready to put in the work, because whether you do it yourself or through an agency, marketing is just one piece of the equation, and you can't fully rely and expect it to do all the selling for your business either.
That's such a good point. That is such a good point, because I do think that there's been maybe it's been oversold. Maybe we've been part of that problem, where it's this idea of that if you just have advertising running, that everything in your business is going to like work better. It's all going to kind of solve itself. We do see a lot of studio owners that show up on our steps. They've been running their ads. They're trying to do, all the things. They've worked with our competitors. Maybe they've worked with us, right? Like, but they're not, and they're doing the advertising, but the ads are getting clicks and they're getting views and they're getting impressions, but they're not turning into customers. And I think that number one, like honestly and truly, if you don't have a process and a method to take someone from total stranger on the internet who clicked on your ad all the way through to I'm ready to sign up and I'll be here next week, if you don't have that process dialed in, then truthfully don't even bother running ads. Like you're not going to maximize it. It's not going to go well. You're just going to come out on the losing end of that. And that we see that probably more than anything else, right? Like that's where people are wasting money.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, even if they get a marketing campaign and it gets leads, the rest of it isn't happening. And so, but then they blame the marketing itself. I think they don't realize that there's more than one system to the growth, the enrollments process itself. So That is my,
Yeah,
I
there's a
think that
lot.
is my final advice on how to maximize marketing is make sure everything else that happens after the leads come in is ready to run.
And and just to be clear, that's everything from a lead is just the moment that somebody gives up their anonymity, their name, email, phone number, right?
Yep.
That's it. That's when they officially become a lead. If you don't know what to do with somebody after that point, we should probably have a conversation. And we're always happy to talk to studio owners to educate them on what that looks like. Best way to get in touch with us is to schedule a call through the dancemotionmarketing.com website. And again, this is not a hard sell. This is not a sales pitch. This is like, use it as an education session. We'd be happy and delighted to talk to you and help you to kind of get your brain around what is this whole marketing thing. And I will leave you with this final thought. If you have been on the fence in your studio business about whether or not you should be advertising, the answer is yes, and yesterday. And the reason why is there have been so many voices for so long saying you have to advertise, you have to advertise, you have to advertise. There are more players coming into the space. And even if they're not working with us, they're working with somebody and they're starting to advertise. So if you aren't doing it, you are definitely getting left behind. And if you don't feel it yet, you will feel it soon. So, final thoughts, get in the game, know your numbers, keep track of what's important, and you'll do well.
Yeah.
We'll see you same time, same place next week.